Well, we're going to open things up with the Radicals. They're forming themselves up on the grid as we speak. Right now, it's James Winslow that's on pole position with Kim Burke right alongside Pete Patton, who had so many victories last year. He's off 3. Chris Serini there in 4th. Then it's Simon Haggerty to Chris Medland, Tony Haggerty. Then we go to Brett Medland, Rowan Ross, Michael Whiting. And it's Brad Nielsen, Kenny, Sue Hughes, rounds out the field, and we are underway with a rolling start. For the first race of the day, Kim Burke is looking wide, just a slight rise in the track there, then a little dip down to turn 1, just to make sure you're concentrating on that 1 kilometre long front straight. And it's Pete Patton that dips in right in front of James Winslow there, the Pom, the Englishman driving the Shannons Radical. And we just jump in behind there and looking back down through the field there. There's Clare pushing through. Peter Clare coming from the rear of the grid there as well. So he's trying to get his way up there. But Pete Patton, who has had the game on a string, leads at the moment. But I tell you what, if I was leading a race and James Winslow was under my rear wing like he is right now, I'd be very, very concerned. They come around that awesome bit of turn 6, which we watched all throughout yesterday. It's very, very interesting. As the wind picked up, it really lifted up on the back there. Just some fluids coming out of the back of the Winslow car there. So, that looks for the dive down the inside. In fact, Patton looked as though he's come to a halt almost there. He just about went backwards. So yes, he has. He's had an issue, and that fluid continues to pour out of the back of the Winslow car.
James Winslow's car, of course, yesterday excluded from race 1. He had pole position, was doing well, but it would seem that due to the fact that he didn't have a scheduled pit stop during the race, his car was excluded. So at the back of the field for him, what an amazing career for James Winslow. British Formula 3 champion back in 2004, Formula V6 in Asia, 2007 champion, Australian F3 champion back in 2008 and 12. He's raced on the Indy circuit up on the Gold Coast as a support to them with the F3s. Been around Australia for a while, just a really well-known name, not only in open wheelers but now also in Radicals over the last few years.
Strange you mentioned those years. I still think of him as a young man as we see Kim Burke on the number 68 down the inside of Patton. He has definitely got issues there. Pete Patton, they are streaming past him now. That is certainly not the way Pete Patton goes racing. He likes to keep people behind him. He's made a radical V. He's very much slowed down on the driver's left coming down past this mega pit complex here. The Shannons Insurance safety car poised at pit exit there, the headlights on, ready to go. Let's hope we don't see too much of it. But he's certainly gone right back down to the back of the field. That's a real shame for Pete Patton. He was beaten at Bathurst at the round earlier on this year, which was part of the 12-hour at Bathurst, and that was the first time he'd been beaten at Bathurst in 2 years of the opening round. So Kim Burke came away with that win, and Perini, who's currently in 3rd, as we look back to see what happened going off the track there. That's Peter Clare off the start line there, who had a really good charge at the first few corners, and it's all come to naught as he's got up into the dirt and already spinning the wheels without coming to a halt. As we see Kim Burke now, the chase will be on for James Winslow. Good luck with that now, Kim. Although did get a win at Bathurst, so that was awesome. There's not many drivers, there's only a handful of drivers, no matter what category you're in, that can say you've had a win at Mount Panorama, and you sort of put that one right at the top of the trophy cupboard, don't you?
As you would too. And speaking of wins, Kim Burke came 3rd in the Radical Cup back in 2015, has never had a win in a Radical race as yet.
Well, yeah, except for Bathurst. So yeah, Kim ticked that one off. Last year came 4th in the championship. Of course, Pete Patton, he took out the title with Ollie Smith, and that was a great run for Ollie Smith. He's been in every RAC Cup since it began, and it was really cool to see him get the 2nd place in the championship last year. He didn't actually take a race win, but consistent podiums right throughout the year, and Ollie's quite the stalwart of Radical racing. You say quite the stalwart, and then hasn't entered here this weekend, so that's a shame. Obviously, tick the boxes at Bathurst, and is holding off just for the next round, which I think they join us pretty much each and every round now at Sandown for the next one through. Kim Burke cemented himself into position 2, just out over a 2nd lead there now to Perini, and we see the number 47 Haggerty car, which will be Simon, getting through there as well. So sitting there in 4th place, Medland, Then Tony Haggerty, Rowan Ross. Now this is the brand new car, the number 88 car for Rowan. He's done a wheel bearing initially early on this weekend, but continue on very, very nicely indeed. Here we go back to the rolling start, which is RAC normal type of start. Winslow looking in the mirrors there. That's very, very interesting. That white helmet on the black livery there. He's checking out where Pete Padden's coming from. So he was well aware that Kim Burke was off to his right, but he was more concerned about the fast charging number 31 there. It should be number 1 because he's reigning champion, but obviously changed up the number there with 31 here this weekend. So that's really interesting that we see the very, very experienced James Winslow looking in the mirrors out there at the moment. In fact, the timing sheet at the moment switched from James Winslow to Yasser Shahin, who they're sharing that car. So maybe it's Yasser at the wheel at the moment and driving away from the field. We'll try and confirm that, but the information we're getting is that Yasser Shahin's at the wheel. That might have been why he was looking in the mirrors to see if someone's coming through, because I wouldn't have thought that Winslow would have been doing that.
And you're right, Darren, that has only just changed in the last lap or so. And yes, Shahin, if it is him in the car, doing a great job at 1:19.90 at the moment through sector 2, looking to set the fastest lap, which is currently held by Kim Burke at 1:58.75.
End of the straight, looking up here at the bend, streaming down past the new catch fences, all that FIA Class 2 type catch fencing. Safety is absolute paramount these days. When building a new track, it's best to put it all in at the very beginning rather than retrofitting the track throughout. Now getting a great shot of the Medland car with Tony Haggerty, the number 5. I like what they put on their airbox, the father and son team, HRT. The Haggerty Racing team. I like it. It's a real good play. They play it up well too. Father and son. You did a bit of research on Tony, didn't you? The reason he goes racing is to beat his son.
That's what he said in an interview. One of the reasons he does go racing is to beat his son. And well, in the past, that's sort of been a great duel, hasn't it, between the two of them?
It has. It's sort of that Simon's got the edge on that, but it's not like Tony's never beaten him. He's come across and out strategy a couple of times where it hasn't counted a raw pace. He's been able to out-strategize and get that through. So that's maybe the dad's experience there. So that is Michael Whiting, who had a great result yesterday. In fact, Michael got up into 4th place. The number 33 now stranded out trackside. So his race will come to a halt momentarily. I would suggest that we may even get a safety car, being that the car was stopped on the racing surface, unless we can get some local yellows and get our fantastic CAMS volunteer officials out trackside. Some 200 of them here, Tony, this weekend. Gee, they fronted up to some pretty wild weather locally here at Taylor Bend over the last few days. Down to Greg Rust in the lane for a quick update.
Steering wheel. It's going to be a little tricky to dive in here, but I'm going to go around and see if I can grab a quick word. Just if you can, tell us what's happened.
Yeah, I just basically lost gears. Coming out of turn 6 and pulling 4th, and it just wouldn't go into 4th gear, so I was stuck in 3rd. I rebooted the car a couple of times on track and didn't make any difference, so had no gears.
Thank you.
Here with the restart for the Radicals there, and that was very interesting watching Chris Perini from 3rd place there as he came on the straight, was just weaving, trying to get a bit more heat into the tyres as the BMW Melbourne Cars and Coffee car went back into the lane, and we're racing again. So it's Yasser Shahin leading away again, and he has got a good bit of gap immediately off that restart over Kim Burke and Chris Perini, Tony Haggerty, Chris Medland and Simon Haggerty. So there we have the father and son. Dad's out in front at the moment in position 4, son down in 6th. We've got another father and son team there as well with Brad and Mitchell Nielsen. Brad at the wheel now, that's Dad. He's leading the charge early on in today's race. Back to Chris Medland. Sue Hughes, who came off the back of the grid, has made her way up to 9th, and she's in the oldest style of SR3 out there this weekend, and you can tell there's a couple of differences with them. One's got like a bulging type of balloon or bubble type front, and the other one's got more of that sort of Formula car type nose cone, a pointed type nose cone. There's not a lot of the older bubble type ones running in the RAC. We do have some of them running in the New South Wales Supersport series as part of the state brand there, but the Radical Australia Cup running in conjunction with the Shannons Nationals. We have most of the newer SR3Xs, or now the new RSX, which is running. And of course there is also available the SR8, but they're not available for competition in the Radical Australia Cup.
Pretty much throughout England and Europe.
Absolutely, and North America. And one of the prizes for winning the RAC is you get to go to the Radical Masters. And that's been held at Spa. It's been held at Monza.
Yeah.
And they're talking about actually holding it at the flat track at Indianapolis, not this year, next
Fantastic.
year. Okay, compulsory pit stops starting to unfold now. Got the 68 of Kim Burke and the 81 of Chris Perini in the lane now. So these two cars came out of second and third in the race. They're obviously trying to get a bit of a break so that they can get some clear air. And they are making their way into the lane. They'll stop. It's for a designated and set amount of time. So there's no need to hurry. There's no madness or having to tear around and do things. So all we really do is, as we can see there, the crew members checking tyre pressures, and that's really just to adjust back to the base setting. We've still got more than half the race to go, so the tyres won't be, I would suggest, gone over operating temps, because we've only had one essentially competition lap since the extended safety car phase. But we're back into the race proper now. Yasser Shahin still leads now. Simon Haggerty into P2 as a result of the Burke and the Perini car in the lane. Chris Medlin and Tony Haggerty also sitting there in the 4. Kim Burke in 5th, who's actually in the lane and will drop down with Chris Perini at the moment that we're seeing there in 5 and 6. So Bill Medlin and Sue Hughes will be in there as well. Look how relaxed it is in there. Kim Burke's just taking the lid off a drink, and now he's trying to work out how to get in there. It's probably best to have a straw, wouldn't you think?
I reckon it might be. You're right. There's the window opening basically on the lap that these guys came in, so not wasting any time, just taking the opportunity straight from the top.
Gee, do you think Kim Burke's a bit of a Mark Webber fan, looking at that helmet design?
Yes.
Webber-esque, isn't it? Very similar there. I mean, who isn't a fan of Webber?
Exactly right.
Even if when he was driving, you sort of thought, geez, he's a very intense young man. These days, what a top bloke.
He had
He's
to be
such a relaxed fella,
didn't he?
Oh, yeah. He was paving the way for decades of Aussies that hadn't made it into Formula One, and he felt the weight of that. But now, he's just this fantastic, relaxed motorsport commentator. We should probably be looking over our shoulders at him. Trebek's maybe he's going to knock on the door of the commentary booth here.
He's doing well overseas, I'm sure, is our man Mark Webber, Sam Haggerty, Tony Haggerty, all coming in. Chris Medland also coming into the lane as well. And as we see these guys come in, our other two guys have gone out, Perini and Burke.
Traffic down there at turn 1.
Good news for Chris Perini, he's actually picked up a spot coming out of pit lane as well.
Just speared off to the driver's left there. The car, white car, just speared off to the grass there. Wasn't sure who that was. Tony Haggerty into the lane. As we've seen Perini and Burke rejoin the field. This is the number 6 of Tony Haggerty, the father. There it is. That's the 47 of Peter Clare. Just speared off to the driver's left. So maybe there is still a little bit of moisture out on the track just around that, around turn 3 where that car was, and just jagged left.
Just didn't turn right enough.
It's disappeared off the screen. So certainly wasn't part of the race plan. Looking across the engine cover there of the Haggerty car, the RSX, and we're back out on track now, and we're looking straight at Brett Medlin and Sue Hughes. And Sue's currently sitting in P3, being that hasn't completed the compulsory pit stop. So we've got the first ones that came in, Perini and Burke. They've switched places, in fact. Perini's gone out and has put Burke behind him. Brad Nielsen out now, Mitchell Nielsen in the number 38. Rowan Ross, who was stranded in the 88, hasn't continued on after that safety car being returned to the pit lane. So I know Tony Ladoni will be working very, very hard to get the 88 back out there, and he's working very closely with Chris Papadopoulos and all the crew down there at Radical Australia, the Radical Australia Motorsports crew.
Yes, it's Shahidin. Be a little bit disappointed, I would have thought, with that safety car coming out. He had a nice little gap of around about 8 or 9 seconds before the safety car, of course, with the pit pit lane and the window opening, effectively the lap after the safety car went off, all that advantage washed off. So it'll be interesting to see when Yasser does come into the pit lane as to how he does come out and whether he comes out in front of Kim Burke and Chris Perini, or whether he actually gets stuck behind him.
Well, the next thing will be is that James Winslow will probably jump into that car during that phase. So the compulsory pit window is still open and they've got plenty of time to still get in to carry that out. Passing manoeuvre down the inside there at 6, which I think after discussions right throughout the last 2 days, 6 and again over at 17, the second but last corner on the track are going to be the 2 big passing manoeuvres, and I think the designers of the track have actually recognise that because they've built a 280-seat grandstand out over there, so they think that that's going to be a place for plenty of action come that August Supercar round. Medlin now in the pit lane. He number 52 came out of 3rd place on the track, and just again making some mirror adjustment there. So nifty little carbon fibre piece of kit right up in behind the wheel arch exhausters.
Not hard to miss the Medlin car on a restart.
Yep. So there's our 68, watching Kim Burke, who came in 2nd place and has now still up into 9th place. Chris Perini has charged through to 5th, hasn't he? Got rid of it. So it must have been something affecting Kim Burke, because he's not been able to get back through the traffic. In fact, he's dropped 4 spots in this compulsory pit stop window phase of the race.
Record lap 2 for Chris Perini since he's been out there, a 1:54.61 on his last lap. So doing a great job is Chris Perini as he starts to work his way through. He's just jumped up again as Peter Clare comes into the lane. So he is now in 3rd place, Chris Perini, and looking the goods at the moment, one might think.
More importantly, the gap to the leader is a 1:42 at the moment, so that's not going to be enough for Perini to get the lead once Yasser comes in for that pit stop, as we've got Greg Rust trolling away down there in pit lane, keeping up with all the info.
Boys, I wanted to extend the conversation that you started before in relation to Chris Papadopoulos. For those of you that know the executive at the Confederation of Australian Motorsport, you'll know Andrew Papadopoulos. This is his son, of course, who has worked over time at the Renault and Lotus Formula One teams, but you've got an important role with Radical Australia, don't you?
Yeah, well, I'm the team manager for Radical Australia, and we look after all of the Radical Australia team cars, the works team there.
All right, and how are things going here so far with the compulsory pit stops unfolding?
It's all going really well, yeah. So we've got a complicated system, much like the GT series, where we have an equalisation time applied to all the cars, as well as a compulsory pit stop time. But it's all going perfectly to plan, and the guys are out there having fun, so yeah, good.
All right, we'll leave him to go back to work, put those headphones on. He's a busy man. Nice to catch up. Cheers.
Thanks, Greg. Cheers, mate.
Yeah, great to get any time with Chris Papadopoulos. He's got so much experience.
The busiest man around motor racing at the moment.
He is busy, isn't he? With his Carrera Cup duties and of course running of the RA Motorsports. Here's a spot change in the race as well, so it's starting to heat right back up there. That's
and
Chris
also
Medlin.
GT duties as well for Chris Papadopoulos as well.
It's always good to get any time Chris Papadopoulos is time well spent. So much time in Formula One and just a wealth of knowledge. And Chris is not an outspoken kind of guy. You've got to sort of drag that information out of him, but once he gets comfortable with the conversation,
spent a long time with Kimi Räikkönen, didn't he?
Yeah. Here's it on. Kim Burke is now getting back on with business there, goes through on Chris Medlin. So some multicoloured extravaganza liveries on these cars really stand out very well. There's our race board as Yasser Shahin climbs out, and James Winslow, the Englishman, who now calls Australia home, and why wouldn't you? Equity One sponsored driver there, just getting comfortable. As you can see, there's no big hurry to get this done. They've got a fair bit of time there in the lane. So Yasser Shahin came into pit lane in 1st place. Sue Hughes currently sitting in P2 and hasn't done her compulsory pit stop. Doesn't have to yet. There's still plenty of time to do that. Chris Perini, this is going to be the next thing. This will see how the field's cleansed after this pit stop phase. Then it goes to Simon Haggerty, who's jumped Tony Haggerty during this phase as well. It's going to be Chris Medlin to Brett Medlin, Kim Burke, the Haggerty, and then it's going to be Mitch Nilsson. And then it is Greg Kenny out there as well, rounding out our top 10.
Doesn't look like the coal baron Tony Haggerty's going to get his wish. and get past his son, Simon. Currently has the upper hand in that battle.
Certainly not. We've got a number of these mineral type barons floating around, with Liam Talbot about to go out. His father, Ken, was renowned for his ability to find things in the ground and dig it up. So it's what we do here in Australia, isn't it? We go car racing at the Bend and we dig stuff up Monday to Friday.
In Melbourne, we put stuff in the ground and hope it never gets dug up.
That's true too. So let's have a look here as James Winslow exits the lane. And we'll see where he gets around, just trying to identify. That's the number 9 of Chris Medlin and the 68 of Kim Burke. So pops out in front of them. Hughes has gone through, Perenni's gone through. So now we have race leader Chris Perenni, who won a race at Bathurst in round 1. And well, in all intents and purposes, you know, just about any other driver in a Radical, you'd think, yeah, well, he's looking good in about 19 minutes' time to stand on the top of the podium. But when it's James Winslow that's going to be chasing you down, you throw all the cards on the table and let the game play out. Oh, big bit of understeer there for the number 6 of Tony Haggerty. Almost didn't make turn 6 there. Fantastic bit of corner around that we're just watching on the number 6 now. This is around the back of the international circuit. Have a look at how wide the track is there at the moment. Greg Russ has got more stories from pit lane.
Physical. It's unbelievable how physical those cars are. The G's they generate, just incredible.
What were the words to James Winslow? He's kind of tapped you on the helmet and was asking a bit about the car, I guess, before he headed off there?
No, I just told him to look out for the wind. There's a couple of corners where the wind's quite strong running that way, so otherwise the car's fantastic. The track's in great nick. Great.
Proud moment for you and for the entire family. I spoke to Sam yesterday. I mean, without overstating it, I know you guys are perfectionists and there is still work to do, but it's come to life, mate. It's real. We're here. This is the first weekend.
Yeah, who would have thought 15 months ago there was nothing here? And what a nice thing for both Sam and I to do so well in our races.
Well done. It's great to see you guys actually out there and enjoying it as well. Nice to catch up. Cheers. Thank you.
Fantastic, Greg, to get a hold of Yasser Shahin there. How proud is he with him and his brother that they've got this facility up and running, and he's led a race from the start. Like, got away, and Yasser's led a race on his own track.
Are they identical twins? Yasser and Sam.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I guess with a couple of years difference.
Yeah, it was like they've just put Sam in a time machine and sent him back a couple of years. That was
That's
amazing, the look between the two.
Yeah. So really cool, and congratulations to them, because, you know, the oldest saying in motorsport is, how do you get a small fortune? Start with a big one.
Exactly.
Go motor racing.
Exactly.
So, you know, you've really put yourself on the line to do that, and thank you from Motorsport. Thank you to the Shahin family.
And the great news is that confirmation, with Yasser obviously out of the car, that James Winslow obviously has gone into that number 7 car and is driving the life out of it at the moment too. 30-second gap now between himself and Chris Perenni, with Sam Haggerty in second place, 9 seconds ahead of Winslow. This is going to be a good battle to see how much Winslow can get out of this car, to see if he can bridge that 30 seconds.
Have a look at the sectors that James Winslow is setting up now. Fastest in the first
Powering
sector,
through.
only on his second lap out. So the car will have, everything's nice and warmed up, tyres are good to go. So James has now got a task ahead of him to get back out in the front of this race. 17 minutes remaining. Time certain race definitely goes to 50 minutes unless race control decides otherwise along the way. As we get a good look at the Chris Medlin car again, coming around down into 14 and 15. As we see the car currently leading the race, Chris Perenni, and it is a very, very measured drive by him at the moment. We're not seeing anything silly. He's not even really going on to the ripple strips. Yesterday the ripple strips were stay well away with how wet things were, but today the cars can run out there. He's not even doing that, so he's not being aggressive. He's just stroking the car along to get himself to the line. And when you've got out over a 22-second lead to Simon Haggerty, you've pretty much got yourself set up for a 16-minute run to the end of this race.
For Perenni, at the moment, it's a 28-second gap between himself and Winslow. Winslow setting the lap record on the last lap of 1:52.90, which is 1.3 seconds than the best lap of Chris Perenni, which was the previous lap record. So at 1.3 seconds a lap, They're circulating in just under 2 minutes, 16 to go. One might think there's probably not enough time for James Winslow to catch up to Chris Perini, but obviously a lot of factors coming into it, Darren. Tyre wear on the Perini car, he came in a lot earlier and the like. Is that going to be a disadvantage for him? It's going to be an interesting finish.
Yeah, I don't think I've got immense amount of respect for James Winslow, but I don't think. Look at how much track Chris Perini's got left there. He's got a whole lot left in the bag there. If he needs to turn it up, he'll turn it up. And I don't think he'll turn it up until he's actually got James Winslow on the same straight as him. And at the moment, he may appear at the bottom of the 1 kilometre long main straight. So he's not even clipping the ripper strips heading out of the final corner.
Just doing what he has to do.
Yeah, it's good. It's a very measured drive. Not stressing the car to a point that it's going to break. Real shame that Pete Padden hasn't been able to get the problems with his car rectified, sitting back down there in pit lane. Same with Michael Whiting and Rowan Ross. So
there was a massive gap between first and second, and here's the gap between second and third. Winslow coming charging on Haggerty. Now only 2.8 seconds between those two.
Yeah, and it's 27 seconds in with 14 and a half minutes left to go. So Chris Perini has driven a very, very strong race. Simon Haggerty, they're in P2 at the moment. This, I guess, is going to be the interest because there's James Winslow lurking in the background, and over the last couple of laps, Winslow's been, well, the best part of 2.8 seconds a lap faster than him, so he'll be right onto the back of Simon Haggerty. And I don't think, Tony, that we're going to see too much. If Winslow wants to get through, I don't think we're going to see too much of a fight from Simon. He's got his own race to win there over his dad. So if he's third on the podium or second on the podium and his dad's behind him, everything is okay.
Cheers, I tell you what, Winslow just keeps turning up the wick on this record time for the Radicals here at the Bender, 152.51 now. So that's come down by, probably 0.4 of a second on his lap beforehand. And once again, back into purple sectors again through sector 1 and 2. So he is really going hard right at the back now of Sam Haggerty, and will overtake him, one would think, up the inside. He does. And into second place now, James Winslow. Sam Haggerty down to third.
Good job there, James Winslow. Picked the perfect spot to do it. And Simon didn't put up any resistance there, left the door open for him, left him plenty of room. No one got carted off, and James Winslow continues on his way. Really, really good to see James Winslow back in the car after his 24-hour race crashed. Here we go. Winslow setting it up. Haggerty just tipping the head to him, saying, there you go, pal. I can see you're coming, and away you go. If
you were dreaming of the ideal passing move and the easiest passing move, it's probably that one right
there. Yeah, absolutely. Flowing into the corner, just getting out nicely, doing a good job, the kind of manoeuvre that you'd expect James Winslow to do. As I was just touching on, he had a horrendous accident in the Abu Dhabi 24 at the end of last year, and fantastic to see him back. Was carted away, and there's nothing worse than seeing a driver being carted away from the track with the medics, and good to see him back here. And I tell you what, this will test him, because a Radical will give you serious G-forces around the constant radius corners that we've seen here. Of course, these constant radius corners are going to be used again next weekend with the Superbikes. They'll love those corners. They're nice and flat for the Superbikes to run through. Another spot change there. The number 38 of Nielsen going through on the number 9 of Chris Medlin. Chris Medlin's, I would suggest, might have some concern with that car, because basically in the last 3 to 4 laps, all we've seen is cars sort of coming through on him and then just driving away like we're seeing Mitch Nielsen do at the moment.
Going around 57s as well would signify that he has got some sort of problem, 3 or 4 seconds slower than the rest of the field. So Chris Medlin losing that spot to Mitch Nielsen. That was for 5th and 6th. At the moment, though, it's Chris Perini, our man in front, as we watch a replay of that overtaking move from Mitch Nielsen on Chris Medlin. Coming to the end of the straight, just pulls out another textbook move on the inside, and Medlin giving him plenty of room to get through.
I tell you what, there's something about a multicoloured extravaganza livery, but there's also something about just red on grey, isn't there? That's a trick-looking car, that number 38. Good thought about the way they've put their livery together. Stands out nicely, and here it is now. The iridescent orange front guard covers. Almost said headlight covers then, but no such thing as front guard covers.
I like the word iridescent. That worked for me.
Yeah. Great PB bought that to us with that VK Commodore all those years ago, the iridescent orange, or day glow orange.
There's our leader, Chris Perini, doing it nicely at the moment, a 22-second gap between himself and James Winslow. Came out of the pits ahead of Kim Burke and hasn't looked back since.
And maintained the gap to Winslow as well. It's still just over 22 seconds. We've got 10 minutes remaining. And
dropped at about 7 seconds as Winslow, but you just don't think it's going to be enough.
Yeah, well, look at the last lap for Perini was a 1:53.8. Winslow's doing a 1:51.2. So there, there's the 1.7 seconds. He needs over 2 seconds a lap.
Well, he does.
And I don't think Perini's going to make a mistake. He's just driving this like he's put a magnet under the track and just followed the way around. Maybe there is a magnet under a track. It's a new track. There's probably a bit of technology there in that.
Tell you what, we spoke about the wins for James Winslow in categories around the world. The experience of the guy is just amazing. 2 years as an A1 GP driver for Great Britain as well for James Winslow back in the day, and also raced Indy Lights for Andretti Autosport back in the day as well. So he's been around.
Certainly has. It's good. Talking about A1, we've got a couple of A1 drivers that drove those cars here with us this weekend. Carl Reindler, who's an integral part of the Radical Australia outfit, as well as the GT DSO, and of course
DSO for Formula 4.
Yeah, and he's got a big program with CAMS, and of course Peter Hackett, who's driving here, was one of the early A1 drivers for Australia back there when Jonesy gave him the nod, back when Pete was racing over at Macau and so on in Formula 3. So the A1 GP might not be with us anymore, but we remember those that represented Australia so very well. Of course, Sydney Motorsport Park was where the local event was held.
Yeah, it was a good concept.
A ripper concept.
Country versus country.
Yep, works for soccer, doesn't it?
Well, yes, it may not in a couple of months' time, though. Whether there'll be a World Cup in Russia, that's another story. Chris Perini, though, not worried about that. He's just worried about what he's doing over this man who's on screen, James Winslow. That gap down to 19.6 seconds. Winslow definitely eating into it now. He's worked 10 seconds off it. But one would think with only around about 4 laps to go, and with Winslow circulating at just over 2 seconds a lap better than Chris Perini, that's just not going to be enough to get him over the line.
Keep your eye out for the next couple of rounds of the Radical Australia Cup. We'll be at Sandown on the 13th of May, Phillip Island the 3rd of June, Sydney Motorsport Park the 23rd of September, and I think at the final round, which will be held down at Phillip Island as part of the Australian Production Car 6-hour weekend down there. So we're just keeping our eyes peeled on those dates.
I'll tell you what, car numbers for Sandown, it's going to be an amazing round of the Shannons Nationals at Sandown next time round.
Car 9 there, Chris Medlin's spinning. So maybe the concern is now growing in stature on board for Chris, because he's now spun it around. So we've seen cars just getting through on him pretty easily. And now a spin. I wonder if he's got a tyre concern or a brake concern, something like that, some performance issue that is rearing its ugly head. But he continues on, as does Chris Perini.
Just back to that Sandown round for the Shannons Nationals next round. Of course, we've got the 27 or so cars that are currently running in the GT3 Cup Challenge for Porsche and Michelin, and just up to 50 cars nearly for the Australian production car race at Sandown as well. It's going to be amazing numbers.
It is. It's interesting. Sort of 4 years ago, we embarked on the reinvention of the AmChamps, and it's just growing. And I think the High-Tech Oils Bathurst 6-hour has helped that as well.
Yeah.
It certainly has. So we look forward to seeing how the Australian Production Car Championship grows with the Shannons Nationals over the next 12 months and going forward over the next many years. It's an important part of the motorsport landscape. This guy has got the Bend Motorsport Park absolutely mapped out to perfection at the moment. Chris Perini, our race leader, coming up on Peter Clare, who we saw have that spin earlier on in the race about the 40-minute mark, about 10 minutes in. Talk about that. Time check, 6 minutes and 30 seconds left for Chris Perini over James Winslow. Then it is Simon Haggerty. Kim Burke has fought back after a middle stanza of the race around the compulsory pit stop window that was a little bit difficult for Kim. Didn't quite keep across what happened with him there, but really the middle part of the lap was, the middle part of the race was a bit of a maze for him. It's Mitch Nielsen in 5, then it'll be Brett Medlin, Chris Medlin, Sue Hughes, and Tony Haggerty. who will go one down to Simon in season 2018. His son currently sitting in P3.
He certainly will. Interesting, though, the position between third and fourth, Sam Haggerty and Kim Burke. There's a 5-second gap. Now, for Sam Haggerty, he's going to want to maintain that because the overall round points are quite interesting as well. Mitch Nielsen, our round leader, on 64 points. Currently in second place is Sam Haggerty on 60, but should he drop that spot to fourth, should Kim Burke pass him, then maybe Medlin might get up. Sorry, Simon Haggerty, did I say? Yes.
So Simon Haggerty in
place,
P3
correct.
there. Sam Shahin's the track owner, and that's Simon Haggerty out there on track.
What did I say, Sam Shahin?
No, you got a bit of Sam Haggerty.
Gee whiz.
That's all right, mixing them up.
Yes,
got
exactly.
a lot going on.
Mitch Nielsen, our round leader at the moment on 64 points. Simon Haggerty in second place on 60 points, and then Chris Medlin in third place on 57. But as I said, if Simon was to drop that spot to Kim Burke, and at the moment that margin between the two of them staying steady, things could just change.
Yeah, absolutely. There's still plenty of time for that to happen, and really the race is on for the spots off the podium at the moment. We're just watching this battle. This is actually for 9th and 10th between Tony Haggerty and Kenny out there at the moment. Greg Kenny, both hailing from New South Wales. Greg Kenny's currently got the older SR3 RS out there, and just watching Tony Haggerty go by in the number 6, and he's also in the older style of the SR3s as well. So one of the interesting things with the Radicals is we're seeing a couple of the Radical competitors sort of coming and going. We've got Richard Bloomfield, who's racing in the GT3 Cup Challenge this year. He had a really good run in the early years, the early championship years, when Peter Opie took out the title, and then he was disappeared off and did some racing. He's a local to Western Australia, so he's doing some racing with Porsches.
James Winslow keeps knocking down that record time. Daz a 150.96 now, and is again on hot laps, on hot sectors in this lap right now. 12-second margin between himself and Chris Perini with 3:40 on the clock. Probably there's about 2 laps to go. Gee whiz, James Winslow trying everything he can, but I reckon he might fall about 5 or 6 seconds short.
You know what James Winslow's trying to do, don't you, Specs? He's trying to chase down the lap that Shane Van Gisbergen did in his McLaren 650S yesterday at a 1:48.3. Got a bit of work to do to get there, but you know, James Winslow likes to have the lap records. He's commonly had James Winslow lap record at many tracks around Australia, that's for sure. So you'd think he'd be aiming for at least taking the lap record for Radicals out of this weekend.
Yeah.
So 3 minutes left to go. This is where we're starting to get a bit of compaction here in this field, aren't we? So that's Sue Hughes in the number 8 there, leading Tony Haggerty and Greg Kenny. So starting to bunch them up a little bit midfield.
That gap between Kim Burke and Simon Haggerty also now down to under 3 seconds with a couple of laps remaining. So this has been a great run by Kim Burke in the final stages of this race 2 for Radical Australia Cup. If he can get past Simon Haggerty, as we said, positions may just change for our round result.
Just listening to one of those cars there on the rev limiter coming out of that corner. So that might have been the number 56 there of Kenny, because he just dropped back. Just forgetting to pluck another gear there, so losing a little bit of ground whilst banging it off the rev limiter.
So many things to remember, Darren.
Yeah, there is so many corners to remember. Gee, on the GT track, there's 38 corners when they came around. We're not using that today. We're going to be using the international circuit. That's still 18 corners. So it's a lot, and you're busy except for this 1 kilometre long straight. So you get on the radio, have a drink, relax, do the belts up tight again, and plunge into turn 1, as we're seeing the number 56 do there now, Kenny. And Tony Haggerty go side by side through 2 and then into 3. So that gives Sue Hughes a little bit of breathing from that charge.
Actually thought Kenny thought he had a chance to get up the inside of Sue Hughes then, and then she said, "Nup."
And gone back behind Tony Haggerty as well. So had a plunge at it and then just went back to where he started from. So good straight line speed.
Our podium position for 3rd and 4th is now really interesting. 1.7 seconds between Kim Burke and Simon Haggerty. This is An excellent battle under a second now. Burke is really charging with the last minute or so lap left in the race. Perini still ahead of Winslow. That is for first and second, a 9.5 second margin between those two. But it's the race for third and fourth that is getting really hot. And there they are on screen at the moment. Kim Burke right up the back of Simon Haggerty and looks to launch up the inside, but Haggerty has that covered.
Certainly does. He doesn't want to give this position up now. This is the last spot on the podium. Kim Burke had a win at Bathurst and wants another win. Got fourth in last year's championship, accrued 217 points. And Simon Haggerty, he finished a fair bit further down in last year's title hunt. He's finished 16th on only 47 points. He only contested one round, so we'd like to drag a whole lot of points out of this round to make sure he can continue on in the 2018 season. Committed to this year, the full title hunt. A lot of these guys are high-powered business and during the week, so sometimes when a round runs and it conflicts with a business opportunity, they do take the weekend off, but they do then try and gather it all back up again and keep in the championship. So Simon committed to this year. Great shot of all of these cars coming down there as the time has clicked over, and we haven't seen the checkered flag because Chris Perini got over the line before the time ticked out. So next time round we'll see the checkered flag for Chris Perini, so he'll go around again. Here's this battle again. These guys didn't want to see another lap, well, particularly Simon Haggerty. Burke looks to the inside. Haggerty left the door open, obviously realised he had the match for it. As we see, these cars will go around one more time. James Winslow still setting fastest laps. There's the checkered flag for Chris Perini. Gets through to take race 2 for the weekend for the Radical Australia Cup. And that's Peter Clare again, spearing off. That looks to be down around about 11-12, I think. Not to worry too much about that because Pete's down there in 11th place. So checkered flag has been shown.
What a great effort by James Winslow. Got that down to a 5.6 second margin between Perini and himself. So a good flying second half of the race for James Winslow. These guys have seen the checkered flag, haven't they, Jeff?
Well, they saw the checkered flag being waved, but that's Chris Perini coming around, continuing on his last lap. And that's the Tony Haggerty car in front of him. Still got a healthy lead over Winslow, which is brought right back down to 5 seconds as we've been watching. And actually, there is James Winslow. Trying to make a little bit of sense about what's going on here because there's James Winslow and race leader Perini. He looks to be covering him off there. So there goes the checkered flag. It'll be Perini to the line and Winslow in second and confirmed by the timing screen. So a little bit of confusion there with the timing screen and what was actually going on track, but we shall sort that out. Either way, James Winslow and Chris Perini did a fantastic job. There it is. The results. Chris Perini, our winner in his SR3 RSX out in front of the field. James Winslow ultimately home 5.6 seconds behind. Kim Burke into P3. Simon Haggerty, Mitchell Nilsson with Brad there into 5. Chris Medlin, Tony Haggerty, Bill Medlin, Greg Kenny and Sue Hughes rounding out the 10 to the line for the second race for the Radical Australia Cup. Good race there. And Peter Clare through to 11th, DNF for the number 88 of Rowan Ross, Michael Whiting and Pete Padden not making it to the line. In fact, only 2 laps in. Field of magnificent looking Porsches. And here we go to have a quick look at how that 50 minutes played out.
It was an interesting start, wasn't it? Yasser Shahin, as you mentioned, looking over his shoulder and looking in the mirrors, waiting for something to happen.
Rightfully so, wasn't it? Because here comes Padden in the 31. Straight down the inside there, he was definitely flagging that, hey, qualifying wasn't great for me. I started off the second row. I'm going to make this a great race. And Yasser Shahin stayed with him. In fact, right up into the back of it. There's Kim Burke coming through there as well. And Perini joined in. There's the spinning number 47 of Peter Clare. A couple of spins during that race for Pete. So just working on a little bit more consistency, a little bit more concentration, I guess, towards the end of that race. And there's the number 33 of Michael Whiting that we had the first safety car for. Here was the restart. Pete Padden was out by this stage as well. We think paddle shift problems with that radical. And Yasser Shahin literally drove away from Kim Burke early on in this phase of the race until we got to the pit stops. There's Perini, the Haggertys, it's giving each other a bit of racing room. Chris Medlin, there he goes down the inside of the number 6 of Tony Haggerty at turn 6. And the race continued to battle on with the number 9, Chris Medlin. Had tales of woe up and down through that race, did both the Medlin guys. He is the ultimate race winner, the number 81, into the lane for the compulsory pit stop. Sue Hughes there battling again with Pete Clare. This was for position after the pit stops as we see Kim Burke going through on the number 6. And there's the two Medlins side by side as they head out to the far end of the Bend Motorsport Park. And here comes James Winslow on his way to a 1 minute 50.51 lap record for the Radicals.
It was a great charge. There was a 30-second gap between himself and Chris Perini. He brought that down to 5.6 in the second half of the race. Tony Haggerty was there on the side. James Winslow picking up another spot on his way back into second place. Mitch Nielsen up the inside of Chris Medlin.
Sue Hughes right the meat in the sandwich of two cars trying to go around, and in fact that ended up working out quite well for her because she managed to keep those two behind her at that point in the race, and at about the 10-minute mark. This is where it started to really heat up. This is for track position, and ultimately this is how the podium rounded out, and that's how we saw it with Kim Burke leading home Simon Haggerty. And then we have them across the line.